pre-concert talk before we present our concert in about an hour of Night and Light. It has been a real honor and a privilege for us with the Glen Ellyn-Wheaton Chorale to welcome this weekend our composer. I almost want to say composer in residence for a short time, at least for a couple of days. We'd keep him if we could, but I think we have to send him back to the North Country. Dr. René Clausen has been our composer, our guest this weekend. He is the conductor of the Concordia Choir in Moorhead, Minnesota, has been in that post since 1986. If any of you know anything at all about collegiate choral music, you will recognize the Concordia Choir as one of the premier collegiate ensembles in this country. They present every year what has become an Emmy Award-winning Christmas festival. It's aired on PBS. Put a little plug for that. Come about 6 months from now, watch for that on television. René is a fascinating man because he shares, he wears two hats, I would say, equally well. He is, as I've just said, the conductor of this wonderful choir. He's also a very prolific and gifted composer and arranger. He's composed many commissioned works, one of which you will hear the world premiere of in just a few moments here as the Glen Ellyn-Wheaton Chorale presents The Cloths of Heaven. He wrote a piece called, an extended piece titled Memorial, right after the tragic events of 9/11 to commemorate that tragic day. The Kansas City Chorale has recorded a CD consisting of all of the music on it is René's music. It's called Life and Breath, Choral Works by René Clausen. It won 2 Grammy Awards in 2013. René is a frequent guest conductor, clinician. He holds degrees from St. Olaf College as well as the University of Illinois at Urbana. You'll hear a little bit more in our concert about his St. Olaf roots. And as I said, the chorale has had the privilege of commissioning René to write this wonderful piece, The Cloths of Heaven. We're very honored to have René here. He's going to talk to us about the composer's craft, and really I don't know everything he's going to say. I look forward to hearing it myself. We're honored, I should say, also to have with him his wife Frankie and his daughter Katie with us today. So would you help me welcome, please, Dr. René Clausen.
I think you would pass for Lutherans. Everyone likes to sit in the back. If you ever feel like moving and coming up forward and being a little more personal, that's just fine with me. Or if you want to stay right where you are, that's great too. I want to say thank you, Greg, for that wonderful introduction. I will try and live up to those words. I paid him a lot of money to say that, actually. So I'm going to, I've taken a few notes about things that maybe you might find interesting about my background, something about the process of writing and composing, and I'd also like to say right up front here, if you have any questions, that's always actually find a dialogue or kind of a Q&A, a kind of fun thing to do. So I'll ramble on for a while here, but then if you would be thinking of things you might like to ask, please. I'd like to leave a little time for that. One of the things I've always done when doing a presentation like this is to admit to you that I have no compositional credential whatsoever. I kind of look at my life as on-the-job training. My undergraduate degree at St. Olaf was in vocal music education, and then both the master's and the doctorate at the University of Illinois are in choral conducting. So actually, my educational background is all in conducting, and really never studied composition formally. I suppose a real composer would say, well, it shows, Clausen. But I was very fortunate in growing up in that I started very early on with learning instruments. And when I was in 4th grade, my classroom teacher, I remember his name was Everett Waugh, played the saxophone for the father-son banquet. And I just thought that was the coolest instrument in the world. So I actually started to play saxophone in the summer of 6th grade, as many, typical of many pre-band programs, which often start with the local band director in the summer teaching the kids the instrument. And my sister then was just 18 months younger than I am, started to play the trumpet. So I thought, well, I'll pick up her trumpet too, an old Bundy cornet with the Rubank Methods book and learning fingerings. And then as we moved to California when I was in 9th grade, the big thing that is in many of the high schools in Southern California was what we called the big bands at that point. I think we might call them jazz arts bands now, but I always think of like a Benny Goodman band and those bands out of the 40s. And in order to try out for one of those, and at our high school we had 2 of them. We had an A and a B group. In order to try out for the A group, if you played saxophone, you had to play flute and clarinet also. You maybe have seen that in a big band where there's a little instrument tree with the saxophones, and there's often on that instrument tree a flute and a clarinet. So it meant having to pick up another couple instruments. Then I was actually dating a girl that was a flute player, and I began to learn flute for dubious reasons. But actually played those 3 instruments in the jazz ensemble. And I was playing trumpet in the band, and then my director, John Pope, came up to me one day and said, we're starting a fledgling orchestra that just meets 2 mornings a week at 7 o'clock in the morning. We don't have any French horns. Would you like to learn how to play French horn? So I brought home the Rubank book and figured out, well, the mouthpiece and the embouchure is a whole lot different than trumpet, but I'll give this a go and play French horn in the orchestra. And then my buddy and I, who were in the same class, were members of what was called the West Valley Youth Band at the end. This was the west end of the San Fernando Valley in California. And we were going to be playing a concert, not a concert, they have what's called the Evening Electric Parade in Disneyland. And if your marching band came and played in that electric parade, they'd give all the kids in the band free admission into Disneyland for the day. So we were going to do that, but the band director, Bob Delwart, came up to me and said, we don't have any tubas for this weekend. And so he sent me home with a 2-piece fiberglass tuba, kind of a sousaphone, if you know what I mean. And we were playing just a couple of marches, and I figured out that if you can play 1, 4, 5, and 1 in E-flat major, you can play about 3 notes in E-flat or B-flat, you can play tuba on a march, and just go bum, 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 bum. So it was actually playing all these various instruments when I was in high school, and so that became a wonderful background for me in terms of just knowing instrumentation and learning instrumentation. I had a wonderful high school choral director, Don Gustafson, who did great music with us. One of the great pleasures I had in high school was that he refused to do mediocre music. He would do just wonderful music with the choir. And I remember being in 10th grade, and we actually did a Bach Magnificat with the high school choir, which is a prodigious piece to do with the high school choir, and then got kind of turned on to choral music. And I had started to think about writing something, or at least arranging a couple of things when I was in high school, and that's actually where it all got started for me, was that when I was in 10th grade and in this jazz band, there was a tune, it was by Burt Bacharach, and we're talking back to 1968, so this is a long time ago, but there was a tune by Burt Bacharach that was sung by Diane Carroll, and if those of you who remember 1968, there was a tune called This Guy's in Love with You, and it's a ballad. You see the sky, this guy's in love with you. Yeah, you can sing if you like. But anyway, what I did, and this is a moment actually I'll never forget in my life, is that I made an arrangement of This Guy's in Love with You for the stage band, or the jazz band. And I think what was really memorable is that was the first time I ever heard anything that I had written down played. And that was a thrilling moment. Then my choir director said to me one day, so, well, you know what, why don't you make a little arrangement of something for the Girls' Glee Club? And back at this time, the Disney show was on Sunday nights at 6:30, and it was presented by Kodak. Any of you remember that? The Wonderful World of Disney, I think at 6 o'clock on Sunday night with Kodak. And they always had these Kodak moments, and during the commercials they would have Kodak moments. And there was this wonderful little tune, and I think I'll go over to the piano for a minute. Ooh, this feels like I'm at a nightclub here, right? And this was the commercial. Where are you going, my little one, little one? Where are you going, my baby, my own? Turn around and you're two. Turn around and you're four. Turn around and you're a young going out of the door. Turn around, turn around, turn around, and you're a young girl going out of the door. Beautiful little tune. And he said, well, why don't you arrange that for the Girls' Glee Club? And so I made a 3-part arrangement for the Girls' Glee and piano of that wonderful little tune. And there was no music or anything. I only knew it from the show, so I would just watch Walt Disney until I could write it all down in the commercials. And then he said, well, then you're going to have to teach it to them and conduct it at the concert. So this is just kind of how I got started with everything. You know, it's just there was this... there was an opportunity, and it was always some music educator. It was some music educator who took that interest in me and gave me these opportunities, which is why all my life I said music is basic. In your public schools, as much as reading, writing, and arithmetic and science and everything else that we need that teaches us how to live, music teaches us why we live, what gives us significance. And so I was put in my plug for music education, and especially the opportunity for kids to express themselves, whether they're playing or singing. It gives them the opportunity to so many things on so many levels, socially, musically, spiritually, and in every level. As all of you know who are singing in this wonderful choir, you get back much more than you ever put in as we become more and more humans. Well, I'd like to, now that I've kind of told you my life history and how I got started with it, as I went to college then, it became more and more of an interest of mine to write and to write music, and I was around it all of the time. I remember Robert Shaw, if you know that name, as a choral conductor, maybe one of the most famous and most gifted American choral directors in the last century, had a bachelor's degree in religion from Pomona College and had no degrees in music. So I figured if Robert Shaw can do it, I can at least try and write some music even though I have no formal degree in that area. So I'd like to talk for a moment about the process for me of what it means to write. How does that all get started? And it's especially interesting to me that when I've done many of these types of events with high school or college students, or I will get emails from high school and college students who are doing reports on live composers. This is kind of a new thing. They have to do presentations on living composers, so we'll get these emails or questions about composition. And one of the most common words that I find in talking about composition with young people is they said, "What is your inspiration?" And I at first tried to think about what words to say there, and now I'm much clearer in my own mind when someone asks me about what is your inspiration or your inspirational process. I will say very little, because I don't think that in general terms, at least, composition has a lot to do with inspiration. Okay? Now that sounds maybe hard or harsh, but I sometimes get the feeling that young people think that a composer sits down at the piano, puts the pencil to the paper, turns the head left to the northwest and say, "God, I'm ready." And that's what I mean, I think, by inspiration. It does not really work that way much. Not to say that that doesn't happen to me on occasion or doesn't happen to other composers, but my own process has much more to do when you compose with making decisions. And all of the music that you study, and that's the way I've kind of come into the world of composition, is by absorbing the music of other composers. So we study a lot of music of other composers, both choral and instrumental. And by studying music, then it goes all into the deep background of which you make your own choice.